I drove past my daughter's house and froze. My wife's silver Lexus was parked at the gate when she was supposed to be at work. Suspicion burned inside me, so I crept closer, heart pounding. Through the window, I heard laughter. My wife's voice mocking me. Then my son-in-law said, "By September, he'll lose everything." My world collapsed in that instant. But what they didn't know, I was recording every word. I'll never forget that late afternoon. The kind of spring day when the sun lingers, stretching shadows across the road like it doesn't want to say goodbye. I was driving home from a job site, dust still clinging to my boots, when I passed by my daughter Emily's neighborhood. Something told me to turn in. I hadn't seen her in a week, and I thought maybe I could surprise her with dinner. Nothing fancy, just her favorite barbecue ribs from Miller's Smokehouse. That girl's always been my pride, and I don't get as much time with her since she married David. As I pulled closer to her house, something caught my eye. Parked right there in the driveway, bold as daylight, was a silver Lexus. My wife's Lexus. Linda's car. I gripped the wheel tighter. Linda should have been at work, at her office downtown, where she'd said she was wrapping up reports for the Henderson account. So what was her car doing here? At my daughter's house, in the middle of a workday. My stomach dropped. At first, I tried to push the thought away. Maybe she stopped by to check on Emily. Maybe Emily wasn't feeling well. Maybe it was nothing. But a voice inside me whispered, "No, Michael. Something's wrong." I parked a block away, not wanting to be seen. My hands shook as I killed the engine. The house looked calm from the outside. Blinds half drawn, front porch neat and quiet. But every instinct screamed there was something inside I wasn't meant to see. I walked slowly, my work boots crunching on the gravel, every sound too loud in the silence. I stayed low near the side of the house, where the curtains didn't quite meet. That's when I heard it. A laugh. Linda's laugh. But not the laugh I'd known for 25 years. Not the one that once filled our home with warmth, number. This laugh was sharp, mocking, the kind of laugh you use when you've fooled someone. Then another voice. A man's voice. David's voice. My son-in-law. I froze, pressing myself against the wall. My heart hammered so hard I thought they might hear it through the bricks. "The timing is perfect," David said, his tone cool, calculated, like he was giving a closing argument in court. "We'll file in June. Claim irreconcilable differences. Under the statutes, Linda's entitled to half of everything, plus spousal support for life." I couldn't breathe. And then Linda's voice floated out, casual, as if she were talking about grocery lists. "The construction business alone is worth $15 million. Add the properties, the vacation home, the investments we're looking at, nearly $20 million total." 20 million. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. They weren't just chatting. They were carving up my life, my work, my blood and sweat, like it was nothing but pieces of pie at a family picnic. I staggered backward, almost tripping over the flower bed. My whole body shook. Was I hearing this right? My wife, my son-in-law, plotting, laughing, counting every dollar I'd spent decades building. David's voice came again, smooth and smug. "The best part? Michael trusts you completely. He has no idea we've been cataloging his assets for months. Bank statements, property deeds, business valuations, it's all copied and ready." Linda chuckled. 2 years of playing the devoted wife, pretending to care about his boring construction stories, nodding while he complained about payroll. God, the man actually believes I love him. Those words, "actually believes I love him," stabbed deeper than any knife. The woman I'd devoted my life to. The woman I'd built a home for, raised a daughter with, celebrated anniversaries and birthdays and Christmas mornings beside. For her, it was all a performance. I wanted to storm in right then, demand answers, flip that coffee table with all their secret folders into the air. But something told me to wait, to listen, to record. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and hit record, capturing every poisonous word. Then a sound I'll never forget. A twig snapped beneath my boot. Inside, silence. Then Linda's voice, sharp with suspicion. "Did you hear that?" My heart nearly burst out of my chest. Probably just the neighbor's cat, David muttered after a moment. You're paranoid. But Linda wasn't convinced. I could hear it in her tone. If Michael found out before we're ready. He won't, David cut in. The man couldn't spot a conspiracy if it were a neon sign. I pressed myself tighter against the wall, barely daring to breathe, sweat dripping down my temples despite the cool April air. The man couldn't spot a conspiracy if it wore a neon sign. That was me they were mocking. Me. The fool. The provider. The husband. And in that moment, standing there with my phone recording their betrayal, I realized my world would never be the same again. Because my wife and my son-in-law weren't just betraying me, they were planning to destroy me. And the worst part? I still had to face them, pretending I knew nothing. When I sat in my truck with that recording still playing in my pocket, my mind kept pulling me backward, rewinding the years like an old VHS tape. How did it come to this? How did the woman I once loved and the son-in-law I welcomed like a son turn into enemies plotting my downfall? I met Linda 25 years ago, back when I was still clawing my way out of debt and chasing contracts no one else wanted. I was a man in his 30s who'd built a construction company from a single truck and a borrowed tool set. Linda was younger, full of charm, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone feel like she'd chosen them to shine her smile on. I fell hard. I thought she fell too. From the start, I worked like a mule to give her everything she dreamed of. While other men spent weekends fishing or golfing, I was pouring concrete and negotiating permits. She liked to call me her workhorse, half teasing, half serious. I didn't mind. I thought that was love me building, her enjoying. When our daughter Emily was born, I swore no one would ever lack for anything in my family. I built our home with my own hands. Every beam, every nail, every detail chosen so Linda could live like a queen and Emily could grow up in comfort. And for a while I believed it was worth it. Emily was my sunshine, my reason to push through 16-hour days. Linda enjoyed the rewards. But as the years rolled on, Linda's gratitude shifted into entitlement. The thank yous disappeared, replaced with, we deserve more. A new kitchen wasn't enough. She wanted granite counters imported from Italy. A family trip wasn't enough. It had to be first-class tickets and 5-star resorts. She'd flip through glossy magazines, circling handbags and jewelry, sliding them across the breakfast table like grocery lists. And when I hesitated, she'd tilt her head, smile sweetly, and say, "Other husbands don't make their wives wait." Other husbands. That phrase still stings. Emily grew up watching all this. She loved me, I know she did, but somewhere along the way, Linda's attitude seeped into her too. My little girl learned early that Mom's opinion carried more weight than Dad's sweat. If Linda rolled her eyes at something I said, Emily would copy it. If Linda dismissed my worries about expenses, Emily would laugh along. They were a team, mother and daughter. I was the man working in the background, providing the stage for their performances. Then came David. At first, I wanted to like him. He was polished, ambitious, spoke with the smooth confidence of a man who'd been told yes all his life. He was a lawyer, proud of it, and Linda practically glowed whenever he talked about cases or legal strategies. The first time he came over for dinner, Linda leaned in close to me afterward and whispered, "You see, that's a man with potential. Not just some blue-collar grunt." I swallowed my pride that night. My entire life had been about turning calloused hands into something greater, but to Linda, success only counted if it came wrapped in silk ties and polished shoes. When Emily married him, I convinced myself it was fine. She seemed happy, and that was enough for me. But slowly, I began to notice how Linda favored David over me. At family dinners, she'd hang on his every word, laughing at jokes I found mean-spirited. If I offered an opinion about politics or business, she'd cut me off. David's the expert here. Even Emily started picking up the habit. "Dad, you wouldn't understand. It's a legal thing," she'd say, brushing me aside while David explained something with that smug, half-smile. It hurt, not because I needed to be the smartest in the room, but because for decades I'd been the one breaking my back to build the life they all enjoyed. Yet somehow, I'd become the punchline. Looking back now, maybe the signs were all there. Linda encouraging Emily to call David for advice instead of me. The secretive looks between them when money came up in conversation. Linda defending David whenever I questioned his spending habits or late nights. "He's just working hard for Emily," she'd snap, as if I'd forgotten what hard work looked like. The respect I thought I'd earned as a husband and father had eroded, replaced by mockery, by subtle dismissals, by favoritism that always left me standing on the outside of my own family. And now I understood why. That afternoon, crouched outside Emily's window, I finally saw the truth. Linda had been grooming David not just as a son-in-law, but as a partner, not for family dinners, not for shared vacations, for betrayal, for theft, for conspiracy. The disrespect wasn't accidental. It was preparation. All those years of Linda favoring David's opinions, all those moments of belittling my contributions, they were building toward this, making me doubt myself, making me look weak, making it easier to take everything without guilt. I clenched my fists in the dark, the recording still playing in my head. 25 years of sweat, sacrifice, and love, all reduced to a scheme whispered through my own daughter's living room. And the cruelest part? Emily had no idea. My daughter, caught in the middle, believing her husband was a partner and her mother was a role model, when in reality they were circling like vultures, waiting for the right moment to pick me apart. That night as I drove home with headlights cutting through the dark, one thought kept pounding in my chest. I gave them everything, and they gave me nothing but betrayal. But they'd made one mistake. They thought the workhorse couldn't fight back. The words still echoed in my ears like poison. "The man actually believes I love him." I crouched outside that window, my back pressed against the cold brick, my phone recording every venomous syllable. My throat was dry, but my hands were steady now. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a witness. For 25 years I thought Linda's love was my anchor. Now I realized it was a mask, carefully worn until the right payday arrived. And the man standing across from her, the man I'd trusted with my only daughter, was her accomplice. I should have walked away, driven home, pretended I hadn't heard, but something in me needed to see their faces, to look in their eyes and know for sure. So I took a breath, straightened my jacket, and walked to my car parked at the curb. I slid inside and turned the key, making sure the engine purred loud enough for anyone inside to hear. Minutes later, the front door opened. Linda stepped out first, handbag swinging at her side like nothing in the world was wrong. Behind her, David followed, adjusting his tie, that smug look plastered across his face. They weren't expecting me, and the shock on Linda's face when she saw me behind the wheel of my truck, it was like watching a stage actor forget her lines mid-performance. "Michael?" Her voice jumped an octave. "What are you doing here?" I forced a smile, casual, as if my heart wasn't tearing itself apart. "Just finished inspecting a job site nearby. Thought I'd stop by and see Emily." David moved closer to Linda, his body angled toward me like he was already preparing to defend her. His pale eyes locked on mine, scanning, calculating. For the first time I saw him not as my son-in-law, but as a predator sizing up prey. "She's not here," Linda blurted quickly, too quickly. I was helping David with some documents." I nodded slowly, playing dumb, though every word on that recording told me the truth. "Oh, interesting. Thought you'd be at work today, Linda. Didn't you say something about the Henderson proposal this morning?" For the briefest second, her mask cracked. Her eyes widened, her lips parted, but she caught herself fast. I left early. Headache." "Sorry to hear that," I said, keeping my voice light. My gaze shifted to David. "What kind of documents you working on, son?" He hesitated, then answered, "Asset division. Divorce case. Complicated one." He gave me a faint smile, as if daring me to question further. Asset division. Divorce case. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. Linda's eyes darted between us, the tension obvious. "Michael, how long have you been here?" she asked, her tone almost accusatory. I leaned back in my seat, shrugging. "Just pulled up." "Why?" "No reason," she muttered, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You just seem tense. Everything okay?" Her words were a dagger wrapped in silk. She, the woman plotting to rob me blind, daring to act concerned for my well-being. I smiled back, matching her performance. Long day at work, you know how it is. David's hand slid across Linda's lower back, resting there with a familiarity that made my stomach churn. Automatic, intimate, like a claim staked in front of me. How long had that been going on? Well, David said smoothly, we were just finishing up anyway. Good timing then, I replied, pulling out my phone and glancing at the screen deliberately, making sure he noticed. His eyes lingered on it just a fraction too long, suspicion flickering. I should get going, I continued. Dinner won't cook itself. Linda forced a laugh. I'll be home soon, just need to wrap things up here. Take your time, I said, opening the door and stepping out. Then, as if I'd just remembered, I added casually, Oh, Linda, doctor's office called earlier about rescheduling your physical. Something about a conflict with your work schedule. Her face went blank for a split second, too blank. Then she recovered quickly. Must be a mix-up. I'll call them later. I shut the truck door, waved lightly, and drove off, my eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. Behind me, Linda and David stood in the driveway, frozen until I turned the corner. And then, just as I suspected, they leaned in close, whispering furiously to each other. They knew. Not everything, but enough to sense I'd heard more than I should have. As I gripped the wheel, the phone recording safe in my pocket, a strange calm settled over me. For years I'd been the provider, the workhorse, the man who thought his duty was to give and forgive. But now I was the man holding the evidence, and they had no idea just how carefully I was about to play my hand. When I pulled away from Emily's house that day, I thought the hardest part would be keeping a straight face. But the truth is, once you know betrayal lives under your roof, you can't unsee it. Every word, every gesture, every silence, it all becomes a clue. That evening, Linda came home at her usual time, dropping her keys into the ceramic bowl by the door like always. She walked into the kitchen humming, smiling, acting as though she hadn't just spent the afternoon dividing up my life like leftover pie. "How was your day, Michael?" she asked, pulling a wine glass from the cabinet. I watched her carefully, my face a mask. "Busy? Inspections, meetings, the usual. Yours?" She hesitated only a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "Oh, quiet. Henderson project's taking longer than expected, so I left early. Headache." The same lie she'd given me at Emily's, Prose's. Word for word. I nodded, pretending to accept it, though the recording in my pocket still burned like a brand. She poured her wine, chattered about nothing neighborhood gossip, a new boutique opening downtown. She avoided my eyes. For 25 years, I thought I knew every shade of Linda's moods. When she was anxious, when she was pleased, when she was hiding something. Now, I realized most of those moods were performances. How many lies had I swallowed, thinking they were truth? The next day, I started paying closer attention. At breakfast, Linda scrolled her phone with an intensity she usually reserved for shopping sprees. "Just a book club chat," she said too quickly when I asked. That evening, she claimed she had a late committee meeting for some charity. She dressed sharp, too sharp for a charity meeting. When she left, I checked her laptop left open on the counter. A document glowed on the screen. Asset Division Case Study. Confidential. Case study, my foot. Meanwhile, David grew bolder. He started calling me directly about business advice, questions that had nothing to do with him. "Michael," he said one afternoon, his voice slick as oil, "out of curiosity, how are your rental properties titled? LLC or personal name?" I tightened my grip on the phone. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, just general knowledge. I like to understand how successful men structure things. Helps me with clients." Clients. Right. I played along, giving him vague answers, never the details. But every question confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't just fishing. He was building a case. Against me. At home, Linda mirrored the same behavior. She'd sidle up while I was reviewing invoices, her voice dripping with casual sweetness. "Honey, remind me again, what's the value of that lakeside cabin? Oh, and do you keep a separate account for payroll, or is that merged with business operating?" She'd never cared before. For decades, her eyes glazed over whenever I mentioned accounts receivable or subcontractor bids. Now, suddenly, she wanted details down to the cent. I'd nod, scribble something on paper, then change the subject. Inside, my blood boiled, but I didn't let it show. Because I realized something important. They thought they were brilliant. They thought I was too naive, too trusting to catch on. And that arrogance, their arrogance, would be their downfall. One night, Linda came home late, her lipstick smudged, her perfume heavy in the air. She walked straight to the mirror, adjusting herself, not realizing I was watching from the recliner. "Long committee meeting?" I asked casually. She froze for just a heartbeat before turning with that practiced smile. "Yes. Planning next month's fundraiser. You know how those ladies are talk, talk, talk." I smiled back, pretending to buy it. But I noticed the faint indentation of a ring on her right hand. Not her wedding ring, a ring I'd never seen before. The little details piled up like bricks in a wall. Her credit card bill with luxury lunches at the Riverside Club on weekdays during work hours. The mysterious spa days charged twice in 1 week when she'd told me she was working overtime. A receipt for 2 dinners at Giovanni's, the most expensive Italian place in town. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine. And yet she'd told me she had a girls' night. They weren't careful anymore. They didn't need to be, at least not in their minds. Because to Linda and David, I was already defeated. One evening, I came into the kitchen to find Linda on the phone, her voice hushed but sharp. She didn't notice me in the doorway. "He doesn't suspect a thing," she whispered. Then a pause, a low laugh. "Of course not. Michael never asks questions." When she turned and saw me, she nearly dropped the phone. "Oh, hi. Just talking to Susan about the charity gala." I smiled, leaned against the doorway. "You sure talked to Susan a lot lately." She forced a laugh too loud. "Well, you know us women. We never stop." I held her gaze just long enough for her smile to falter before I walked away. That night, lying in bed beside her, I stared at the ceiling while she scrolled her phone, the glow lighting up her face. I thought about all the years I'd trusted her, all the times I'd taken her word as truth. But now, every word from her mouth was a weapon. And the worst part? She thought I hadn't noticed. For days I walked around the house carrying 2 versions of Linda in my head. One was the woman I had known for a quarter of a century, the one who baked apple pies every Thanksgiving, who cried at Emily's graduation, who kissed me goodnight even when we fought. The woman I believed loved me in her own imperfect way. The other was the Linda from the recording, the cold conspirator who mocked me to my son-in-law, who planned to cut my life into pieces and cash them like checks. The war between those 2 images was tearing me apart. Then, one evening, I came home bone-tired from the job site. Concrete dust clung to my jeans, and my back ached from hours of standing in the sun. Linda was in the kitchen, apron on, humming softly as she stirred a pot of stew. The smell of onions, garlic, and beef filled the air, comfort food, my favorite. She turned with that familiar smile, the one I hadn't seen in a long time. "You look exhausted, Michael. Sit down. Dinner's almost ready." I froze in the doorway, heart pounding. For a moment, it was as if nothing had changed, as if we were back in the early years before money and ambition turned everything sour. I sat, watching her move around the kitchen. She ladled soup into bowls, placed bread on the table, poured me a glass of iced tea. Everything felt warm, domestic, almost tender. "Rough day?" she asked gently. "Yeah," I said, my voice low. "A lot on my mind." She reached across the table, her hand brushing mine. "You work too hard. You always have. I don't say it enough, but thank you for everything you've given me, given us." My throat tightened. For the first time in weeks, I let myself believe. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe she was under stress. Maybe David was manipulating her. Maybe she'd lost her way, but could be pulled back. I wanted to believe that the woman stirring stew in my kitchen was my wife, not the stranger plotting against me. We ate together quietly. She even laughed once, that soft laugh that used to melt my anger after long days. I went to bed that night almost hopeful. Maybe I could save us. Maybe 25 years wasn't a performance. But hope, I would learn, is the cruelest liar. The next afternoon I stopped by Emily's house again, unannounced. I told myself I just wanted to check on her, but in truth I needed reassurance. I needed proof that Linda hadn't truly turned against me. When I parked down the street, I saw it again, Linda's Lexus in the driveway. My chest tightened, but I forced myself forward. I crept to the same window, careful, silent, my phone ready. Inside, Linda lounged on the couch, wine glass in hand. David stood across from her, his tie loosened, smirking, and then I heard the words that crushed whatever fragile hope I had left. Linda swirled her wine lazily and said, 2 years of playing the dutiful wife. Do you know how exhausting it's been? Listening to his boring stories about cement and payroll, nodding like I care. God, the man actually believes I love him. David chuckled. Don't worry. By September, you'll be free, rich, and rid of him. Linda raised her glass, smirking. To freedom, and to finally living the life I deserve. The life she deserved. Not the life we'd built together. Not the home I carved with my bare hands. Not the years I sacrificed weekends, birthdays, vacations. She wasn't grateful. She wasn't even neutral. She believed she was entitled to it all, and entitled to laugh while taking it. I stumbled back, my heart pounding like a drum. That stew, that smile, that gentle thank you at dinner, it was all performance. She wasn't softening. She wasn't reconsidering. She was playing me, as she always had. That night, when she came home, she kissed my cheek, hung up her coat, and asked about my day with the same easy tone. I looked at her and saw, not my wife, but an actress. Every gesture, every word, every smile rehearsed to keep me blind. And in that moment, whatever part of me still longed to save our marriage died. I no longer wanted to rescue her from David's influence. No, she wasn't being influenced. She was leading. The Linda I loved was gone. Or maybe she'd never been real at all. The night Linda toasted to her freedom was the night something inside me hardened. No more hoping, no more excuses. If she and David wanted war, then I'd give them war, but on my terms. The next morning, I went to my office earlier than usual. While the crew poured concrete out on the site, I sat at my desk with files stacked high, yellow pads ready. For 35 years, I'd built this business with sweat and strategy. Now, I would turn those same skills against the people I once called family. I started with our joint accounts. Every statement, every transfer, every odd charge. At first glance, everything seemed normal: mortgage payments, utilities, Linda's endless shopping. But then patterns emerged. $2,300 transferred to a savings account I didn't recognize. $4,800 to Riverside Country Club, yet I hadn't set foot there in months. A series of $1,500 withdrawals, always on Tuesdays, always in cash. And then I found it. $47,000, siphoned in 8 months, funneled into an account with 2 names on it, Linda Harris and David Miller. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft. They were already living like partners, financially bound, preparing to cut me out of my own empire. I sat back in my chair, breathing slow. I'd always prided myself on being calm under pressure. That calm saved me now. Because the old me might have stormed into the house, slammed the statements on the table, demanded answers. But I knew what they'd do: deny, lie, spin. So, instead, I documented, copied, photographed. They thought they were gathering evidence on me. They had no idea I was building a case of my own. That same week, I made some quiet calls. Friends in the construction circle, a few old golfing buddies, even a retired accountant I'd trusted for years. Tell me what you know about David Miller, I asked each one. The stories poured in. Sharp lawyer but owes half the town money. Lives like a king but borrows like a beggar. Has champagne taste and a beer budget. And the worst, he'd already racked up complaints at the state bar. Mismanaging client funds, promising payments, then disappearing. Dismissed for now, but not forgotten. His reputation was thinner than glass. The man plotting to gut me financially was drowning in debt himself. Meanwhile, at home, Linda pressed harder. She began asking questions that cut too close. Michael, do you still keep those offshore accounts? You mentioned them years ago. What's the exact value of the warehouse property? Just curious. Do you still have that partnership with Morrison Concrete, or did you dissolve it? She'd tilt her head sweetly, act as if she were just making conversation. But I saw the calculation in her eyes. Every question was bait, every word meant to pull information out of me. I'd answer with half-truths, enough to sound natural, but never the full picture, and then I'd change the subject. At first, she didn't notice. Then she grew impatient. One night at dinner, she snapped, "Why are you always so vague lately? Don't you trust me?" I looked at her calmly, the woman who'd been funneling our money into accounts with another man, and said, "Of course I do." That answer seemed to infuriate her more than a denial would have. David, too, was growing bolder. He called me one afternoon, his voice full of fake warmth. "Hey, Michael," I was thinking, "maybe you should let me help with some estate planning. I know the law inside out, could save you a fortune in taxes. Why pay some outsider when family can take care of you?" I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles ached. "I've got it covered," I said flatly. He chuckled, unfazed. "Suit yourself. But you know, it's dangerous not to plan these things properly. People can lose everything overnight." There was something in his tone, a warning, a threat wrapped in politeness. After I hung up, I stared at my office wall for a long time. That call told me everything. They weren't just scheming quietly anymore. They were pushing, testing, seeing how much I'd reveal, how far they could go before I snapped. And that arrogance would be their undoing. By Friday, I had a folder 2 inches thick. Copies of bank transfers, notes on Linda's lies, testimonies about David's debts and misconduct, evidence strong enough to make even the smoothest lawyer sweat. That evening I came home to find Linda sitting on the couch, glass of wine in hand. She looked at me over the rim, her smile sharp. "You've been quiet this week," she said. "Just tired," I replied, loosening my boots. She tilted her head. "You work too hard. Maybe it's time you let someone else handle things. Someone you trust." I met her gaze, steady, unblinking. "Maybe." Her smile widened, convinced I was finally bending. She had no idea that every word, every move, was already being written into her downfall. The storm broke on a Monday morning. I was at the office reviewing blueprints when my phone buzzed with a call from my lawyer, James Morrison. His voice was clipped, serious, nothing like the easygoing tone he usually carried on the golf course. "Michael, you need to come in. Now." Those 4 words chilled me. When I arrived, James was waiting with a folder thick enough to choke a horse. He slid it across the table. "Your wife has filed for an emergency divorce petition, along with temporary spousal support and," he hesitated, his jaw tightening, "allegations of financial abuse." I stared at him, unblinking. "Abuse?" He nodded grimly. "She's claiming you've cut her off from marital assets, restricted her access to accounts, intimidated her with money, and controlled her spending patterns for years. It's serious, Michael. Judges don't play around with this kind of accusation." I opened the folder with trembling hands. There it was, in black and white. Linda's sworn statement. "Michael has systematically isolated me through financial control. He withholds funds, scrutinizes every expense, and threatens to leave me with nothing if I ever defy him." My stomach turned. Lies. Every word. But she wasn't finished. Attached was David's affidavit, full of polished legal phrasing. "Mrs. Harris has consulted me regarding years of coercive control. The recent freezing of accounts provides evidence of escalating abuse. For her safety and stability, immediate relief is necessary." David, my son-in-law, writing about me as if I were some monster. My pulse pounded in my ears. I looked up at James, my voice rough. "Can they really do this?" He exhaled slowly. "They already have. The court will hold a hearing within the week. Until then, Linda's asking for exclusive use of the house, $15,000 a month in temporary support, and a restraining order limiting your access to joint funds." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the walls close in. They'd made the first official move. It didn't matter that I had recordings, statements, suspicions. On paper, right now, I was the abuser. When I got home that night, Linda was waiting in the kitchen. She wore a calm smile, the smile of a woman who thought she'd already won. "Rough day?" she asked sweetly, as if she hadn't just declared war on me in court. I didn't answer. I set my briefcase down, my hands trembling with the effort to stay composed. She tilted her head, sipping her wine. You seem stressed? Everything okay? The gall of her words made my blood boil. She wasn't just lying, she was enjoying it. Across the room, the wedding photo on the mantel caught my eye. Me in a rented tuxedo, her in ivory silk, both of us smiling like fools who believed in forever. Now I wondered if she'd been planning her exit even then. The next blow came from Emily. She called the following evening, her voice hesitant, uncertain. Dad, Mom came by today. She's worried about you. I closed my eyes. What did she say? That you've been different, controlling, that you've been cutting her off from money and making threats. Emily's voice cracked, torn between loyalty and doubt. Dad, I don't want to believe it, but you're asking yourself if it's true. I finished for her. Silence. I gripped the phone tighter. Sweetheart, listen to me. Everything your mother is saying is a lie. She and David are working together, but I can't explain everything right now. Just trust me. Another silence, then Emily whispered, I want to, Dad. I really do. But David says, hearing his name from her lips felt like a knife twisting in my chest. My own daughter, repeating my enemy's words. When we hung up, I sat alone in the darkened office, head in my hands. For decades, I'd been the provider, the protector, the man everyone leaned on. Now, in the eyes of the law, and maybe even in my daughter's heart, I was the villain. The next morning, papers were taped to my front door. Notice of hearing, temporary motion requests, financial disclosure demands. Linda walked past them with a smile, sipping her coffee as if nothing had happened. Looks official, she said lightly. You should probably get used to it. I clenched my fists, every instinct screaming to shout, to rage, to demand the truth. But what good would that do? She had the legal paperwork. She had David whispering strategies in her ear. And for the first time, I realized how close I was to losing everything. My house, my business, my daughter. All of it hung in the balance. That night, lying in bed, Linda rolled over and whispered, You should have treated me better, Michael. Maybe then I wouldn't have had to do this. Her words sliced deeper than any court document, and for a brief, terrifying moment I believed she might win. By Thursday, the weight of Linda's lies felt unbearable. Everywhere I turned, her story had already taken root. Neighbors avoiding me, whispered conversations at the hardware store, even a cold glance from the pastor at church. It wasn't just about money anymore. Linda and David wanted to rewrite history. They wanted to paint me as a monster. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized they had a powerful weapon. Emily. If they could twist her against me, they wouldn't just wound me, they'd gut me. That night, I sat in my office staring at my phone. My thumb hovered over Emily's contact for a long time. Part of me wanted to protect her, to shield her from the ugliness. But another part, the father in me, knew that keeping her in the dark would only hand Linda and David the victory. I hit call. Dad? Her voice was cautious, professional, almost clinical, the way she talked to patients. Sweetheart, I said softly, we need to talk. In person. An hour later, Emily walked into my office, at the construction headquarters. She carried herself with the straight-backed posture of someone trying to keep emotions buried beneath professionalism. Mom says you've been different, she began, settling into the chair across from me. I studied her face, so much like her mother's, but without the coldness. My daughter, my only child, and the pawn in their scheme. Emily, I said carefully, I know what Mom and David have been telling you, and I know it must be confusing, but I need you to hear something, not from me, from them. She frowned. From them? I pulled out my phone. My finger hovered over the play button. Yes, a conversation they didn't mean for me to hear. She crossed her arms. Dad, if this is some edited... Just listen, I interrupted gently, and then decide for yourself. I pressed play. Margaret's voice, no. Linda's voice poured from the speaker, dripping venom. When the old fool finally signs the papers, we'll have everything we planned for. Emily's eyes widened. David's smug tone followed. The construction business alone is worth $15 million. Add the properties, the investments, we're looking at nearly $20 million total. Her hands tightened on the chair's armrest. And then came the killing blow. Linda's laugh. 2 years of playing the devoted wife, pretending to care about his boring stories. God, the man actually believes I love him. Oh. Emily flinched, as if the words had slapped her. The recording played on, filling the office with every calculated detail, every cruel joke, every dollar sign attached to my blood and sweat. When it ended, silence hung heavy between us. Emily stared at the phone, her face pale. How long have you had this? Since last week, I admitted. I heard them at your house. I've been documenting everything since. Her lips trembled. She said that about you? About your marriage? I nodded slowly. I wish to God it weren't true. But that's who your mother has become. And David, my voice cracked with restrained fury. David isn't just your husband. He's her co-conspirator. Emily covered her face with her hands. For a long moment she didn't move. Then she whispered, All this time, I thought maybe you were being controlling. That maybe Mom was just afraid. But she's the one lying. Both of them. Tears welled in her eyes. My own husband. I leaned forward, resting a hand on her arm. I didn't want you to be caught in the crossfire, sweetheart. But you needed the truth. Now you have it. She dropped her hands, her expression shifting from shock to something sharper resolve. Dad, she said firmly, I believe you. I'll testify if I have to. I'll tell the court what I've heard from Mom, what I've seen from David. They won't use me as a weapon against you. Oh, relief surged through me so strong I nearly wept. For days I'd felt like a man drowning. Now, for the first time, I felt a hand pulling me back to the surface. But Emily wasn't done. I'm leaving him, she said flatly. David, our marriage is over. He used me, Dad. He used my love, my training, even my career to try to destroy you. I can't, her voice cracked. I won't live with that. I swallowed hard, my chest tight with both grief and pride. That's your choice to make. He won't push you. She shook her head. It's already made. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope take root again. Not because the war was over, it was far from it, but because I wasn't fighting alone anymore. Emily stood, squaring her shoulders. What happens now? I met her eyes, steady and sure. Now, sweetheart, we stop playing defense. It's time they realized they picked the wrong man to betray. Once Emily knew the truth, everything began to shift. It wasn't just me against Linda and David anymore. Their lies started to corrode the very foundation they thought would protect them. It began with Linda's social circle. For years she had reigned over the ladies at Riverside Country Club, her manicured nails tapping on crystal glasses as she bragged about vacations, jewelry, and new cars. But betrayal has a way of leaking, like water through cracked plaster. By Saturday brunch, whispers about her situation spread like wildfire. I wasn't the one who spread it. I didn't need to. Truth has a way of finding ears. At the club, Linda swept in wearing her finest heels and pearls, expecting the usual greetings. Instead, women she once called friends suddenly became fascinated with their plates. Her bridge partner of 5 years excused herself to take a call. Another woman claimed she had to leave early, though her drink was still full. By the time Linda reached her usual table, only one seat remained, and even that chair shifted slightly away from her. When she told me about it that night, her voice trembled with rage. They're turning on me, Michael, after everything I've done for them. Can you believe it? I just nodded. People have long memories, and short patience for liars. She glared at me, but I caught the flicker of fear in her eyes. For the first time, she realized her social armor was cracking. David, meanwhile, had bigger problems. Through my contacts, I learned the State Bar Association had scheduled a hearing for him. Contractors he'd cheated came forward angry men who'd waited months for payment. The amounts weren't huge individually, but together they painted a clear picture. David Miller, the sharp young lawyer with the expensive suits, had been dipping into client funds to cover his own debts. One afternoon, my investigator, Mike, called me chuckling. You'll love this, he said. Your son-in-law tried to withdraw from that joint account with your wife 3 times. Every attempt flagged and froze. He screamed at the bank clerk until security had to escort him out. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the image. The man who once smirked at me across family dinners, the man who thought he could outwit me, reduced to shouting in a lobby like a petulant child. But arrogance dies hard. David doubled down, meeting Linda late at night in his office. Through contacts in the building, I learned they'd been overheard arguing furiously. "You promised me this would work," Linda's voice shrill through thin walls. "And you promised he was an idiot," David snapped. "Now the bar is breathing down my neck, and you can't even keep your friends on your side." Their perfect conspiracy was splintering piece by piece. At home, Linda tried to keep up appearances. She still played the role of the concerned wife, still smiled at me across the dinner table, but her mask slipped more often now. She snapped at little things: burnt toast, a late delivery, my silence. One night she slammed her glass on the counter so hard it cracked. "Why don't you ever talk anymore, Michael? Just sit there staring at me like you know something I don't." I met her gaze calmly. "Maybe I do." Her hand trembled on the glass. For a moment I thought she might lunge at me. Instead, she stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her. Every day, I felt their desperation growing. They weren't just plotting anymore, they were scrambling, clawing, trying to hold on to a plan unraveling faster than they could patch it. And desperation makes people dangerous. The twist came a week later. I was at the construction site when Emily called, her voice urgent. "Dad, you won't believe what Mom just did." She came to my office. Said she needed my professional opinion as a psychologist. She wanted me to testify that you're controlling, paranoid, maybe even unstable. My chest tightened. "And what did you say?" Emily's tone sharpened. "I told her she was crossing a line. That using me was manipulation. But Dad, she won't stop. She's desperate now." That confirmed it. Linda and David had lost control of the narrative. They weren't playing offense anymore, they were grasping for any weapon, even if it meant using Emily. That evening, I stood on the porch, watching the sun set over the house I built with my own hands. The fountain Linda once bragged about, the gardens she insisted on suddenly, they felt like stage props in a play that was ending. Inside, Linda was on the phone, her voice high and frantic. I caught snippets. "Bar hearing. Investigators. Everything's collapsing." I smiled to myself. The predators had become the prey. The Davenport County Courthouse smelled of polish and paper, the same way it had when I signed the contracts that built half the city. But that morning, walking through its glass doors with James Morrison by my side, the air felt heavier. Linda was already there, sitting at the plaintiff's table. She wore a conservative navy dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back tight. She looked every bit the part of the trembling victim. David sat behind her, whispering into her ear like a devil on her shoulder, his tie perfectly knotted, his smirk faint but visible. When our eyes met, his smirk widened. "Checkmate," it seemed to say. The judge entered, gavel striking wood. "This is the matter of Linda Harris versus Michael Harris. Petition for emergency divorce, spousal support, and restraining order on grounds of financial abuse." I sat tall, steady, even as my stomach churned. This was their arena, but I had come prepared. Linda took the stand first. Her voice trembled, carefully rehearsed. "Your Honor, for years Michael has controlled me through money. He scrutinizes every expense, makes me beg for basic needs. Last week he froze all our accounts. I couldn't even buy lunch." The judge nodded, taking notes. "Do you have specific incidents?" Linda clasped her hands, her voice breaking. "Once I asked to buy groceries and he snapped, 'Don't waste my money.' Another time he threatened to cut me off entirely if I ever considered leaving. I live in fear every day." I almost laughed, except nothing about this was funny. She was rewriting decades of my life, turning generosity into control, twisting protection into punishment. When James cross-examined, Linda's mask barely cracked. She parried every question with vague but emotional answers. The judge frowned at her inconsistencies, but still, her victim performance was strong. Then came my turn. I stood, my palms steady on the table. "Your Honor, everything my wife just said is a fabrication, and I can prove it." David leaned forward, alarm flickering across his face. James connected my phone to the courtroom's audio system. "We present Exhibit A." The room fell silent. Then Linda's voice filled the chamber. Clear, cold, unmistakable. "When the old fool finally signs the papers, we'll have everything we planned for." The jury gasped. Even the judge's pen froze mid-note. The recording went on. David's smug voice. The construction business alone is worth 15 million. Linda's mocking laugh. 2 years of playing the devoted wife. God, the man actually believes I love him. The more it played, the paler Linda became. Her hands clutched the arms of her chair, her knuckles bone white. David tried to mask his panic, but sweat beaded on his forehead. When it ended, the judge looked up, her eyes sharp. Mrs. Harris, do you have an explanation for this? Linda opened her mouth, but nothing came out, just silence. David whispered furiously in her ear, but the damage was done. The entire courtroom had heard their conspiracy in their own voices. James stood. Your Honor, not only is my client innocent of abuse, but Mrs. Harris and Mr. Miller have engaged in a deliberate conspiracy to defraud him of his assets. This recording proves malicious intent, collusion, and perjury. The judge's gavel struck once, hard. Petition dismissed, with prejudice. Linda's mouth fell open. David's shoulders slumped, his lawyerly arrogance evaporating. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, this matter will be referred to the district attorney for potential charges of perjury and fraud. And as for you, Mr. Miller, she fixed him with a stare sharp enough to cut glass. Given your role in this scheme, I expect the Bar Association will be very interested in these tapes. David's smirk vanished. For the first time, he looked like what he really was, a cornered rat. When the gavel fell a second time, the sound echoed like a hammer driving the final nail into their coffin. I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I had in months. The whispers in the hallway weren't about me anymore. They were about Linda and David, the conspirators caught in their own trap. Outside, Linda caught up with me, her voice desperate, trembling. Michael, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. We can fix this. I turned to her slowly. You laughed while planning to destroy me, Linda. You raised a glass to my ruin. There's no fixing that. Her face crumpled, but I didn't stay to watch. David stormed past, his phone already in his hand, barking into it like a man trying to hold on to a career already slipping away. I need damage control now. But no amount of damage control could erase the truth everyone had just heard. For once the lies weren't mine to bear, they were theirs. The weeks after the hearing felt like stepping out of a storm cellar into clear air. The sky was still heavy with clouds, but the worst of it had passed. Linda moved out almost immediately. Not by choice, but because the court stripped her petition bare and left her with nothing. No spousal support, no claim to my company, not even the house she once paraded to her friends as proof of her success. The prenup she'd signed all those years ago, back when she thought she was marrying a workhorse who'd never built an empire, now came back to haunt her. I saw her only once during the move. She stood in the driveway with a single suitcase and a face streaked with smeared makeup. The Lexus was gone, repossessed after months of unpaid loans she thought I'd keep covering. Michael, she said quietly, almost pleading, I never meant to hurt you like this. I met her eyes, calm, steady. You didn't hurt me, Linda. You hurt yourself. She dropped her gaze, climbed into a borrowed car, and drove off. David's fall came faster. Within 2 weeks, the state bar had suspended his license pending a full investigation. By the time they finished combing through his accounts, over $100,000 of misused client funds came to light. Clients walked away in droves. His office lease was terminated. And Emily, my Emily, filed for divorce. I was with her when she signed the papers. Her hands shook, but her eyes were firm. He was never really my husband, was he? She whispered. Just Mom's partner in a plan. I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head like when she was a little girl. Sweetheart, he fooled us both, but you're stronger than he ever imagined. She cried then, not just for the betrayal, but for the years she'd wasted believing in him. Yet when she left that courthouse, she walked taller, freer. As for me, the community that Linda and David thought they could turn against me did the opposite. Contractors, bankers, even old rivals shook my hand. You handled yourself with dignity, Michael, one man told me at the Chamber of Commerce. Most of us would have lost our temper. You let the truth speak instead. And the truth had carried me further than anger ever could. Work poured in. My company's reputation, scarred briefly by their accusations, rebounded stronger. People trusted a man who'd survived betrayal without crumbling. New contracts rolled in. My workers, my second family, stood by me every step of the way. The house was quieter without Linda's presence. For a time the silence felt hollow. No footsteps on the stairs, no clinking of her glass at the counter, no constant chatter about dresses or vacations. But gradually, I realized that silence could be beautiful. It wasn't emptiness, it was peace. I filled the space with new things. Dinners with Emily, long talks with old friends I'd neglected, walks through the garden I'd built myself. For the first time in years, I could hear my own thoughts without Linda's voice drowning them. One evening, I sat in the living room with a cup of coffee, staring at the wedding photo still on the mantel. For a moment I thought about taking it down, but then I shook my head. That photo wasn't about Linda anymore. It was about me, the man who gave his all for love, who believed in family, who stayed true even when others betrayed him. I didn't need to erase the past. I just needed to live differently in the present. Emily stopped by that night, bringing takeout Chinese food. We ate in the kitchen, laughing over fortune cookies and silly memories. At one point, she grew serious. "Dad," she said, "I don't know how you did it. If I'd been in your shoes, I would have lost my mind." I smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe you would have surprised yourself, just like I did." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I'm proud of you, and I'm proud to be your daughter." Tears burned my eyes, but I held them back. That was all I needed. Linda? She faded from our lives like a shadow at dusk. Last I heard, she was working retail at the same mall where she once spent my money like water. Friends gone, reputation gone. The luxury lifestyle she thought was her birthright gone. David? Disbarred. Last rumor said he moved out of state, working as a paralegal under another man's name. His arrogance stripped, his career in ashes. And me? I was still here, still standing, stronger if a little scarred. Betrayal had nearly destroyed me. But it hadn't, and that, I realized, was my victory. It's been months since the storm passed. Some mornings I still wake expecting to hear Linda's voice drifting from the kitchen or the sound of her heels clicking across the hardwood. But the house is quiet now, and in that quiet I've discovered something I didn't realize I'd lost peace. I sit sometimes in the living room, staring at the wedding photo still perched on the mantel. Me in a rented tuxedo, Linda in her ivory dress, smiling like we were invincible. For a long time, that picture cut me open. I thought it proved how blind I'd been. But now I see it differently. That photo isn't about her. It's about me, the man who gave everything he had for love, who believed in vows, who built a life brick by brick. Yes, she betrayed me, but that doesn't erase who I was, or what I gave. And maybe that's the hardest lesson of all. Someone else's lies don't erase your truth. When I look back on my marriage, I can trace the cracks now. The moments when gratitude turned into entitlement, when partnership turned into performance, when thank you became you owe me. I missed the signs because I wanted to believe the best. I wanted to believe love meant forever. But love built on lies will always collapse. Eventually the mask slips, and when it does, you realize the person beside you wasn't loving you, they were performing for you. Linda's mask slipped at my daughter's house. David's smirk gave him away long before the bar association came knocking, and together their arrogance blinded them to the truth. I wasn't the fool they thought I was. Karma didn't come in the form of rage or revenge. It came quietly, through their own choices. Linda laughed about being free and rich. Now she's standing behind a retail counter, ignored by the very friends who once praised her. David thought he'd build an empire on lies. Now he's disbarred, scrambling in obscurity. Meanwhile, Emily, my daughter, the one they tried to use as a weapon, found her strength. She left the man who betrayed her and chose truth over manipulation. That is the victory I hold dearest. As for me, I'm still building, still working, still standing. My company survived, my reputation endured, and my life is finally honest again, without performance, without masks, without betrayal in my own home. Do I miss Linda? Some days, yes, but I don't miss the performance. I don't miss being a prop in someone else's play. I'd rather live alone in truth than together in lies. So, what's the moral? It's simple. Betrayal can strip you bare. It can shake your foundations, make you question everything you believed in. But if you hold steady, if you keep your dignity, and let the truth speak louder than lies, betrayal cannot destroy you. Love is not what someone says, it's what they prove. And sometimes the hardest lesson is realizing that someone's "I love you" was never love at all. Linda was right about one thing. I really did believe she loved me. But belief doesn't make it true. Now I know the difference. And maybe that's the greatest gift betrayal ever gave me: clarity. So, I'll leave you with this question, one I ask myself often when the house feels too quiet. If the people closest to you plotted to take everything you've built, would you crumble under their lies, or would you fight back and let truth be your weapon?